This is a production of Cornell University.
Seeing as we're 3 minutes past, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the 2026 Cornell Hemp webinar series. We're really excited to kick off yet another year of conversations around hemp production, research, and innovation. If you joined us before, welcome back. And if this is your first time here, welcome. We're very happy to have you. My name is Malin Murdoch, and I'll be your host for the 2026 series. I am a graduate student here in the School of Integrative Plant Sciences. This webinar series is made possible through the support from our College of Ag and Life Sciences, which funds graduate extension and outreach assistantships to help advance Cornell's land grant mission and support programs like this one. So over the next several months, we'll be bringing together researchers, industry leaders, practitioners to explore how hemp is being measured, evaluated, and advanced across disciplines. All right, now, what I'm really excited for. I'm so happy to introduce today's speaker, Justin Clune, who is the CEO and co-founder of Skysense, an ag tech company developing AI-powered tools for crop monitoring and decision support. Now, I've had the pleasure of meeting Justin at the NOCO Hemp Expo a couple of years ago, and I've been following his work and Skysense's growth ever since. It's been really exciting, honestly, to see how their technology is being applied across so many crops, especially hemp. So with that, Justin, please hemp us away. The Zoom room is yours.
Thank you, Malin. Very thoughtful introduction, and it's a pleasure meeting you at NOCO too. I'm excited to meet you all here, everyone attending the webinar, to share more about our story and how we've applied AI to measuring hemp. And I'll get right to it. So my name is Justin Clune. I'm the CEO of Skysense, and we founded in 2020. And our very first prototype was hemp. I was working my dad's CBD hemp field. It was 120 acres. And I saw an opportunity, and you'll learn a lot about that opportunity and how we solved the problem that I saw on my own dad's farm. I also want to mention that we use the website hempscouter.com and the Hemp Scouter brand for the hemp work that we do in agriculture. We've done over 5,000 acres of rogaine male plants for commercial hemp fields across many clients in multiple states. And we've done so with AI-enabled maps instead of the traditional rogaine of just going into the field and scouting by eye. I have a startup exit. I attended UC Berkeley and the University of Tokyo. I've done science at Berkeley National Lab, and that's just a little bit about me. So I also just want to introduce my team a little bit because they're really the brains behind the brains. I want to give them credit. So I'm just the one lucky enough to present. In particular, my co-founders, Philip and conveniently Philip. They're both, okay, so Keynote crashed, but I have a video backup, so I'm gonna use the video version. I think you guys can still see my screen, right? If I could maybe enter full screen. Okay, so they're my co-founders, Chief AI Officer, Chief Technology Officer, and Patrick, our agronomist, and we have a big team beyond just them. So this is a video of a drone flying over a large CBD hemp field. This was actually more of a marketing video, but we fed it frame by frame into our AI to locate male plants. I think videos are kind of fun, so I just want to introduce the video first, but I'll go into the details here in a minute. And that's one male plant. So typically in a CBD hemp field, you might have 10,000 female plants and just 3 male plants, male or hermaphrodite. Now, why is that a problem, or how do we get that ratio? Firstly, everyone's using feminized seeds. And even when you do the feminization process properly to get close to 100% female plants, it will never be 100%. The best case scenario is 3 males out of every 10,000 females. The pollen from a single male can spread miles and can pollinate an entire field. So there's a very big risk that if you don't find and remove those males before they're releasing pollen, then you pollinate all the female plants and you end up with seeds. Now, seeds in CBD hemp is a problem because one, the plant diverts its resources towards, making that seed rather than making CBD or some other psychoactive. So you'll have lower flower weight. You'll also have lower CBD percentage. And people can't really profitably extract CBD if the percentage is too low in the plant. So it's just a kind of a known fact that in the industry that you have to find and remove the male plants in a timely fashion, usually 4 times in the season, right when they express their gender. And another thing I'd like to teach about is just what is AI, because I've mentioned we use AI to find those male plants. Well, AI is the creation of intelligent machines that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence. The machines are programmed to learn purely from data. So they don't need explicit instructions like if this, then that. They don't need somebody feature engineering. It just needs data, and it can learn the patterns in the data automatically to reproduce the same kind of tasks a person can do. In our case, the task of finding male plants and eroguing them, we collect a lot of data on what the males and females look like and teach an AI system to tell the difference. Other things that we can do is crop stand counts, count the plants, or find birds and wildlife and chase them out of fields. In general, you collect data to make a prediction, and you have some kind of optimization for farming, like lower labor, lower chemicals, higher quality, or some data that's useful, like a yield estimate. So just one little thing, Malin, I don't actually see any questions, but if there are questions and you feel like interrupting or you guys can't hear me or something, just go ahead and jump in. Otherwise, I'll just continue as is. Okay, so weed mapping, particularly the male plant in CBD hemp, as I mentioned, it's a big risk, and you have to mitigate the risk by removing them. This is also what's called a green in green detection. So it's easier sometimes to do drone maps when it's a fallow field, the ground is brown, and you're only mapping weeds that are green that stand out very obviously. But green on green is a harder task, and it requires typically deep learning AI. So how it works, how HempSkyder locates male plants. First, we have a drone on the farm. We like to use fully autonomous drone systems that don't need an operator on site. They'll fly a pre-programmed path that zigzags above the field, collecting images of every square foot, every plant. Then it can also return to home, recharge itself, and fly all day. And we got a special license from the FAA to do that legally in all 50 states. Now that we have drone images of the plants, that's when the AI detection starts. We do have AI that's real time on the video, but we also have AI that's done photo by photo. So the AI detection will do the same thing a human can do, which is tell the difference between male and female. When we first started the company, I was kind of hopeful that something like a multispectral sensor or a thermal camera could see the males. And just the fact of the matter is, none of the things we tried worked. The only thing that worked was AI. And I think that it makes a lot of sense. Sometimes you're just hopeful that a different data layer is going to have a signal, but ultimately, unhealthy plants look very similar to male plants. You end up with too many false positives. And the best way to do this is the one we developed, which is AI applied to red, green, blue. And so every time the photo has a male plant in it, it also has a GPS embedded in the image. So we know the location of that male plant, and we make a map. And because this is a needle in a haystack problem, about 95% of the work is actually walking around blindly trying to scout for those male plants. So when we give the roguing team, the laborers in the field, a map that tells them exactly where those plants are, they can walk right up to each one and pull it out much more efficiently with up to 95% less labor. And on the image on the right, you can see somebody pulling out a male plant. If you look closely at that image, the male has these little pollen sacs, and that's really a necessary feature that you have to wait for the male to be mature enough to have pollen sacs to be able to tell the difference between male and female. It's also a really tiny feature, so that the way we do this is incredibly hard. It's a lot of data, it's a lot of flight time, and it's a really good AI. So this is an image of one of our clients teaching the workers that have been roguing plants for years how to use a map to do the same job more efficiently. And I thought this was a pretty cool moment of history, if you will, because I've never seen laborers that pull weeds or rogue plants using a smartphone to do their job. And one of my big visions for Skysense is bringing AI to agriculture, which means, digitally transforming how we farm and using that computer that's in your pocket to walk right up to this problem plant and pull it out faster and more efficiently. I think that's been a pretty big deal. And in general, we're discovering all kinds of ways that drone maps and AI can improve efficiency and sustainability in farming. So here's a video showing you similarly a drone looking around for male plants. And this is really old. I feel like I'm almost embarrassed to show it because the drone equipment we use now is so much better and the methods we have are so much better. But this was kind of like, again, more of like a marketing video. You're not totally seeing our back end, but it kind of is fun to see that from the perspective of the drone on the bottom right and the third person view of the drone on the top left. So these two videos are lined up. The the timing is in sync. And if you look carefully, there's a male plant. Some of those rectangles are false positives, but this one's a real true positive. So in machine learning lingo, that means the prediction is correct, a true positive. All right, so this is just me in the field. I think this was this year. Uh, it's hard to appreciate the scale of some of these fields we work in. Some of our clients have over 1,000 acres. Um, you can kind of see I'm walking up to a male plant. So this was discovered by drone. I had a map to show me where it is, and that's what the male plant looked like up close. And this on the right is all the trash bags that males that have been rogued have been put in a trash bag to prevent pollination and then carried out of the field. And this is just one tiny mountain of bags where it looks like a dump. There's so many bags sometimes. Um, this is the maps themselves of male plant locations that were rogued. So on the left, you can see this was earlier in the season. There were more plants, like more males per acre. And on the right, this is a little later season where it's like the last sweep. Usually farmers do one sweep per week of the same field for 4 times. But everyone does it a little different. One of the other cool things about the image on the right is we overlaid a drone map of the vegetation, and you can see those lines are access roads. And we started to notice that if labor rogues plants without the help of a drone map, they often leave behind the hardest to reach males. So even though they're well trained and well intentioned, the ones that are furthest away from the access roads are always the ones that they leave behind. And some of our clients like that they can actually have data that gives them more peace of mind that the job is done. And so they may still use labor for the first sweep and then use Skysense for the next 3. This is some of our drone pilots. It's not the full team, but it's exciting to see how our team's been growing every year, usually doubling or tripling in size. I think we have more than a dozen pilots actively working with us, and I want to give a shout out to them for their hard work to make all this possible. And now changing topics a little bit, because this is about measuring hemp. Um, Another thing we can do besides roguing male plants is counting plants, making a stand count. We can also count weeds for weed pressure maps. So it's the same platform, the autopilot drone on the farm, and then an AI-based detection of an object of interest. In this case, if you look carefully at the middle image, these are very young hemp plants grown by direct seed, but they're just getting started. And those little green numbers there are actual precise measurements of the size. So we can count the plants and measure the diameter of the plants. And it's pretty common that you can't get a high stand like success rate. And so it's always hard for when you're farming a new crop type, like hemp is relatively new in the big scheme of things for agriculture. I mean, I guess it's not totally true. After it's been made illegal, and now that it's legal again, we're relearning how to farm hemp, and things go wrong in the early season where stands go missing, and it could be cutworm, it could be birds, it could be wind. You know, who knows? There's a lot of things that can go wrong when the plant's just getting established, and the farmers are trying to investigate the cause and get more uniform stands. So the other thing is that hemp processors may like to keep tabs on how much yield to expect from their partner farmers. So they also have an interest in the farm count maps. And the map is color coded to show where the high stands and low stands are. And sometimes these spatial features correlate with the hills and valleys, and they tell a story that helps explain why things went wrong or which part of your field is going to be the best. This is that same image at full size. If you can see, there's two rows of plants, and the top row only has one plant. The bottom row has four. And so these missing or dead plants, it's a pretty big deal. Not only is it kind of wasted resources that you're putting down nutrients there and water and all that, but also it gives more space for weeds to grow. So hemp is pretty fast at shading out weeds, but if you don't have a uniform stand, and high density of plants, you might have trouble, bigger weed problems in the long term. So, related to stand counts, we've been requested by hemp farmers and plenty of other crop types to chase birds out of fields. And this kind of sounds crazy. When I first was requested it, I didn't totally understand why they were requesting it. But now that we've been doing it commercially at scale, there's actually a huge amount of crop loss in hemp and in other crops to birds. So hemp and lettuce and other crops that get attacked at the seed and seedling stage, sometimes you don't even know that it was birds that was the cause of the damage. You just know that you're not getting a good stand count. Now, other things like blueberries, it's very obvious that they're eating your crop, and you know their poop turns purple. It's been measured as a huge problem. Probably $500 million a year of food is lost to birds and wildlife in America, and so we've developed a solution to that too. So Skysense hazes birds and wildlife out of fields with a loudspeaker on the drone, and the drone actively chasing these pests out of the field. So again, same platform, autonomous drone, AI detection. This time it's real time and it's patent pending and all this cool stuff. And it's a 114 decibel loudspeaker with sounds that we've adapted to the species of birds. And we have a cool video to show for that too. See. So birds adapt, and so do we. We stop bird damage automatically without labor. And this is kind of a customer facing video. Remotely managed drones patrol your fields. And the loudspeaker targets birds and wildlife, targets the pest birds. We change the flight patterns and the sounds to keep birds guessing and ultimately reclaim the farmer's airspace. the drone will self-recharge and fly all day, and we'll remotely supervise it. One drone system has a 2-mile range, and it pays for itself one season. It's cheaper than nets. We also have thermal drones that can fly at night and chase out wildlife. So, let me go back here a little bit. So I know it's not as on topic, but it's just important to note that we do this with an FAA license and insurance, no on-site labor. So it's kind of rare. A lot of people haven't really thought of drone-based data collection being this remote and affordable and continuous. So I think this was important to us when we started with hemp operations. We had so much flight time that we're thinking of a good solution to that. Like sending pilots to remote hemp fields was expensive and inefficient. So we ended up developing this system to solve our own problem, and then realizing that it enables drone services to be more economic in a variety of other use cases like the bird mitigation and wildlife mitigation. So back to measuring hemp. This is actually onions. I think I showed you the hemp stand count already, but the stand counts that we do, we also can do weeds. So the red circles are weeds. And it's important for farmers to prevent weeds. They're another pest. They're going to compete for resources with the plant. And in organic fields in particular, which is typical of hemp, you can't use conventional chemistry and do the broadcast spray of herbicide. So weed removal can be a very high cost if you're using labor. It's also high cost if you're using weed removal robots. In general, I think the farmers do their best to get a good stand and have it grow fast to shade out the weeds and try to limit how much labor budget that they need. But it's pretty common that weeds can grow out of control, and you can have very high crop loss or high labor cost to try to solve the weed problem. This is just more examples of what the stand count and weed map raw data looks like, with the circles. The AI detections are circles around each plant. And if you look carefully, you can see where there's missing plants. This particular example is lettuce. I wish that a hemp stand count looked like this, but we'll get there someday. And there's more. So not only can we count the plants and the weeds, we can size them, including weeds. So here is some weed pressure, or essentially plant population map of the same field, but one is the number of weeds per acre, and the other is the size of the weeds. And that can be kind of interesting because how you manage the weeds depends on the size. If the weeds are too small, the labor removing them can't see the difference between the weeds and the plant, and you're getting in there too early. If they're too big, it's too late. It's going to be really costly to remove them. So you got to time it just right. And maybe if you have robots or something, the operating range of that robot depends on weed diameter. And in conventional fields, the rate of the chemical application is usually recommended by an agronomist, and they use the weed diameter and weed species to make those decisions. And so an agronomist that might be using our data would love to have information like this, which is the distribution of plant sizes for weeds and crop. And so this is a histogram on the left. I find when I'm working with farmers, sometimes you give them too much data and it's actually a problem. They don't have enough time in the season to sit down and look at it. So we try to help make things as easy as possible by delivering action instead of delivering data. But if there is an agronomist working for that farm that is data savvy, we're enabling them to make better decisions with this digital maps of farms. Other more concrete use case, this is a particular weed in grass seed fields. So ryegrass is a weed in tall fescue, uh, you know, grass seed fields. And we honed in the AI to just locate the ryegrass, very similar to the male plants in CBD hemp, where it's green on green. We've done work like this in 30 different crop types, and it's all very important to get the details right. The flight parameters, the quality of the data, the timing, the AI quality itself, and the amount of data can be pretty paralyzing. So these are very hard tech problems that we just kind of show the results, but we're excited to try to make this problem solving easier and easier. Right now, our tooling is pretty much just used internally and by our partners, but someday soon we'd like to make Skysense more of a do-it-yourself app. And in the meantime, we end up doing kind of the full service data collection, data processing, integration into the farm. And this particular integration would be either roguing by labor or spot spraying. And so we've done some spot spraying where we can put a prescription map, essentially a shapefile of where the weeds are. We can put that into spray equipment that they already own, be it a ground rig with spray nozzles or a spray drone with variable rate flight route. We're able to put our Skysense map into that spray equipment to only spray the weeds instead of spraying the whole field. And that can both be savings on chemicals, and it can also be avoiding your main crop taking a yield hit by being oversprayed and avoiding putting down chemicals in the soil to disturb the ecology when you don't need to. Some more data layers that we do is VARI, which is very similar to NDVI. NDVI uses multispectral, VARI uses green. So we're able to essentially make a plant health heat map where red means you've got vegetation that's diseased or dying or nutrient, some problem. Does not diagnose the problem itself, just tells you where the problem is. So this has to be used as a complement to help boots on the ground, like a scout or an agronomist. The farm manager themselves should go investigate those issues, but we're careful not to overpromise that this cannot be used as a diagnostic. It cannot find male plants. But it's still a very useful tool. I think I finished a little early, so I guess there's gonna be a lot of time for Q&A. Maybe I'll go back through some of the previous slides during Q&A. Um, but you can find us at hempscatter.com and skysense.ag. This is my own email. We're excited to do more university collaborations, get more clients, hire more drone pilots. I think that in general, using AI and drones to have richer data, digital maps of farms, and then help with efficiency and sustainability. We're really passionate problem solvers working on that. And it's fun to connect with you all, and you're welcome to reach out. So I'll try to figure out how to do the Q&A thing now.
Yep, we have a couple of questions in there. Also, thank you, Justin, for taking us through that. Before we hit some of the Q&A, have a couple questions myself being right, I'm a researcher and I apply drones in my research. So first question is, have you applied any of this apart from like CBD hemp to fiber and grain hemp? Or have you
Oh,
had
that's
any
a
interest
great
in that?
question. We have a big interest in it, but frankly, like when I was meeting a lot of fiber and grain hemp farmers, they were trying to farm at such a low budget that they didn't really feel willing to try out new tech. And I think that one of the more recent inquiries I got that might be a good fit with them economically is actually protecting against birds. And so with fiber and seed hemp, I think that bird problems are regional. Not every farmer has them, but the ones that do could potentially be using our bird mitigation services to protect the crop. The other thing is just stand counts, right? I think that they plant very high plant density compared to CBD hemp, and sometimes they've got like bigger problems than uh, how do I put this? There's a lot of learning going on how to use the right amount of nitrogen and right amount of water, and can you even do dryland hemp with no water at all? And how tall does the hemp get? And in some of the fiber hemp fields I've been to, I've seen huge variability in the height and thickness of the hemp. So, we have not developed the tools to measure like thickness of a hemp plant, but we could actually do something like a height under. If someone has a really good stand and really dense population, we could do a digital surface model before and after different points and see where you have variability in height in the field. So there's opportunities here. We just haven't commercialized them, but I think that and then it's concerned that if they're trying to grow at a really low budget, they're a little bit avoidant of any tech vendor.
Fair, fair. Thank you for answering that. And my second question, for those researching or utilizing drones and AI in hemp research, at what altitude have you been flying these in terms of data quality and data capture?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And frankly, we try not to answer it because we don't want people figuring out our secret sauce and, copying us. But I would say to teach a fellow like drone researcher or someone in the field that struggles with finding the right altitude, the way I think about it is like start with sanity checks, start with collecting images at various altitudes and looking at that photo to say, can I see the feature I need to see for this capability? Sometimes it's bad news. You can only see that feature you care about when you fly ridiculously close to the canopy. Then you have operational challenges with flight time and even things like motion blur and the size of the data. So another way to approach it sometimes, if you're a little bit more on the commercial side instead of on the research side, is just like, I got a hard stop that I'm not going to fly any lower than 100 feet because otherwise I can't economically get through the acres. And so I think a lot of other sort of drone services tend to fly in like the 100-foot range. Skysense, we really have crossed the entire range from 5 feet to 400. And we start with any particular problem, like, okay, this is the problem we solve. This is the right height to solve that problem.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll go through some of the questions here for you, and then if we get through that and no others come in, I might have a couple more questions myself. All
Yeah.
right. So the first question here is, are you waiting till the flowering stage to accurately differentiate male from female? I believe during the early
Yes.
growth phase, both look pretty much the same. And then the follow-up to that is, it seems like you're using oblique imaging instead of nadir. Do you find that oblique imaging works better for the classification task?
So the first question, we do have to wait for the actual gender expression, which is typically the pollen sacs starting to form. We do our best to be so speedy with the delivery of maps that those pollen sacs are not going to open and release pollen. So there's this really important timing that we have to be able to do this as early as possible, make our deliverable as fast as possible, and ultimately have the roguing team use that map as fast as possible. So, and there's a lot of different features that are slightly different about the male plant. Besides just the pollen, the plant structure looks a little bit more like one of those kind of like curved. I don't know the right name for it, the candle and Hanukkah. But and then it's
Calabra?
menorah.
Oh,
I think menorah. Yeah, so it's like kind of like curved, and then the female is a little bit more like a Christmas tree. So yeah, then the other thing is the female starts to get really dense with buds, and the male is not like that. And the male starts to grow a little taller and starts to be a slightly different shade of green, kind of like yellowish. But all information, we don't have to explicitly train the AI like look for this, look for that, look for this. We just collect a huge amount of data of males and females, and the AI learns all these features on its own. It also learns whether it's oblique or nadir or early in the morning, late at night, mid-afternoon, looking at the bright side, shady side, whatever. We basically contain as much variability as possible that we expect to see commercially in the training data. And at this point, we have like terabytes and terabytes, probably even a petabyte of hemp data. So our AI ends up being very robust in general and works on the first try with new clients. And so we're pretty proud of it. But getting here was the most painstaking thing was the huge amount of data and annotation of the data, drawing rectangles around the male plants. And so um, sometimes we've found much easier problems to solve than gendering hemp plants.
yeah. I see a nice translation to that in terms of like fiber and grain hemp too. A lot of the time it's nice to see in the field from a researcher's perspective. Oh, forgive me. Right, the ratio of male to female plants at those densities. And I can imagine that is something that your application can do at such a high density planting. Again, noting kind of the variability between different sites. And if you're able to get your hands on a fiber and grain field that's willing to trial and test with
Yeah,
you, I see that as a nice application. The
we'd love
next
to. Yeah.
question I see here is, and perhaps the most popular amongst right grain hemp is what bird species do you see the most issues with? Maybe at first as it pertains to hemp, but then in general, I guess, to your other crops as well.
Yeah. I'm not an ornithologist. I'd love to meet some and partner with them. Sometimes we just see the bird in the field and we make a guess at what species it is. One that's kind of a common offender is the starlings. Starlings can have huge swarms of thousands, tens of thousands of birds, and then they descend on one field, and a lot of the crop is lost in hours. And you turned around for one day and you're like, where did all the stands go? So sometimes I think that may be the biggest offender in hemp because you know but it really depends on region. In other crop types we've seen all kinds of birds be problems, like robins, swallows, waxwing, you name it, larks. So we've encountered a wide variety of bird species, and even getting more experience with wildlife too. And I think for the hemp farmers, there's kind of always this question: is it birds, or is it cutworm, or is it something else? And I think if a client of ours is using the stand count service and the bird hazing at the same time, we could help them answer that question more definitively.
Awesome, thank you. And then the next question we have here is for your weed detection task, that image looks very high resolution. Again, another question on the flight altitude for that. Maybe you have a general range for weed detection. And then we might have missed it, but which specific drone or the manufacturer do you use?
Yeah, so trying to find where that weed is. Feel like it was here somewhere. Um, so basically, it's again kind of proprietary info. I won't say exactly what our flight parameters are, but I would just remind people that you know you should do a sanity check where you take a drone photo at different altitudes and confirm that you can actually see the weed that you're interested in or not. So what's common is that people fly way too high And the GSD, ground spatial distance, is a topic that I think a lot of you already know. Let's say that you're flying at max legally allowable altitude and your GSD is 3 centimeters per pixel. That means like a whole 3 centimeters is going to be 1 pixel. You get a lead that's 1 inch in diameter and that's a single pixel. You really think you're going to analyze that with like any level of quality? It's just going to blend in with the nearby pixels and you're going to have a skip, or you're going to miss it completely in the data. So I think that if you're working with organic, you're working on smaller sized weeds and you need to push limits. If you're working with conventional, maybe their tools, chemistries are compatible with larger size weeds, and you may get away with flying higher. So, but yeah, I mean, I think you should know what size weed is kind of like below detection limit. I forget what the other question was. Oh yeah, so drone equipment. We are drone agnostic. We do like to use DJI. I think 90% of the market does for the same reasons, but we do modifications. So we write our own software for the flight routes and for the data analysis. We don't use any of the DJI's like off the shelf stuff. A lot of their up and coming like AI stuff that's just like embedded in their tooling, it's really not that great. Um, and sometimes yeah, you can't make your own custom models and stuff. Or if you do, it's yeah. Anyways, there's also just issues of availability of that equipment in the future. So the foreign drones are on the FCC covered list. That means that new models that come out to the rest of the world, America's not going to get them. But the current models that are approved by the FCC were grandfathered into those, and we can keep getting them into the country. I have relationships with suppliers who are still getting DJI in. A lot of suppliers stopped doing that. So.
Yeah, and then the next follow-up question here we have is, have you applied this technology for detecting nitrogen and other nutrient deficiencies in the field? I think we touched a bit on it on your other crops, but in terms of translating it to hemp and potentially also too, I know you were speaking of those variable fields, right? Just using
Yeah,
this as a tool to then help those variable fields out and kind of assess what's going on.
I just moved it to this slide that shows the Vari. I think that this could be a useful tool for analyzing nitrogen deficiency. If you did see some nitrogen deficient plants being more of a yellowish hue, it would show up as yellow or red in the like problem area in a Vari heat map. So
Right. My follow-up kind of question, maybe comment to this would be, have you considered doing AI and learning with the diseases in hemp? I know using CBD hemp is a common
yeah,
use case foundation just because its density is a little bit lower and growing, and you can start to build and train off of that. But just
yeah.
want to, I don't know, probe your mind and ask if that's something you guys been looking into.
So we have. I think that like as with hemp and any other crop we work with as a commercial company, our starting point has to be what is the value to the farmer of us doing this service? And then can our price be lower than that? So it's like the farmer has to get a return on investment. Let's say they're going to spend, I'm just making up numbers, okay? Let's say they're going to spend $100 an acre, but we delivered value of $300 an acre, maybe in the form of crop protection or something like that's yield that they would have lost, but now they have an extra $300 an acre of revenue thanks to us. That's a 3x return on investment. It's an easy decision for them to say yes. Now with disease, we have to ask ourselves, like, is it a big enough problem in hemp that farmers are going to invest in some advanced tech to locate the problem or solve it earlier? Typically the farmers, they care about early action to be more preventative rather than knowing where the problem is. So some of our challenges are, well, if we're not earlier than a human scouting by foot, then we're not really match aligning with the customer. And the other problem is if the disease is kind of a needle in a haystack problem, like the male plant, then we have to do a huge, very costly service in order to scout for that disease. And then most of the time you say, hey, it hasn't happened yet. So it's just like there's this economics problem, which is the main reason we haven't done much disease stuff. I think that we're on the lookout for, opportunities, and we like working with farming partners who work with us commercially on the wildlife mitigation or the male roguing, and then they're teaching us which diseases that they'd be willing to invest in, and we'll do some free trials, just like kind of R&D alongside our commercial work with the same farmer.
Awesome. One question that I forgot to ask, and I'm so happy that someone else asked it, just for our audience here. Where in the country is Skysense? And has Skysense ventured to other countries?
Yeah, so we're headquartered in Richland, Washington. Um, we are commercial in 4 states on the West Coast, as low as Arizona, as high as Washington on the border of Canada, and we are expanding to the East Coast this year. So we're going to be starting that expansion in Florida and Georgia. We're pretty excited about that. And that's kind of where we're hiring the most right now. Like we need some 107 pilots there. We're hiring a salesman very soon. And we have done some international work because we're a remote team, and the very early uh, formation of our company, we were even in Japan. And that's a whole other story. I don't really think you need to hear the full story, but let's just say that we've done some work in Japan, Cambodia, France, like you name it. We keep getting people asking us to do stuff in Europe, so and South Africa and Australia. So we've been pretty focused on let's narrow our services, let's narrow our region, and let's try to scale with quality. And we are doing that very well right now. So I don't know exactly when we officially go international. If we do work with international partners, it'll probably be the situation that they fly the drone themselves, and they have to be highly qualified, because we don't really like working with someone who is a farmer that's new to drones that doesn't fly them properly. So we like having a lot of influence on the data capture being quality.
Awesome. That's amazing. Going coast to coast. I love that. Another question. I know you mentioned earlier you're no ornithologist, but if it's came up or if you guys discussed it there at Skysense, they were wondering about how the drones will affect the bird's health when hemp used to be grown widely across the US, our bird population was dramatically larger, and it accounted for 60% of their diet. So by scaring them away from the
Wow.
fields, do you worry that it could harm the bird population, or do you have any insights on, right, your technology on the effects of the bird population?
Well, those are new stats to me, so thank you for sharing. I think it's fascinating to just understand the history of hemp and how it used to be this industrial feedstock that was grown at a much bigger scale, and this magical plant that we all love. But Yeah, I didn't realize that that the birds would be so interested in the plant that it would affect bird populations. So I guess I don't have a comment on that, except for the most of our commercial experience with bird mitigation right now is in like uh, open field vegetables and berries, like orchards. Those are relatively small acreage. Uh, and the birds do have natural habitats and natural diets. Um, so when we're protecting the field non-lethally, we're really helping them, do what's more natural, which is like staying in natural habitat. Um, and at this point in our growth, we're still such a small company that we'd just be a drop in the bucket. They're realistically going to go eat the neighbor's farm.
Fair enough. Thanks for your time to answering the question. Yeah, was a difficult one, but it's a good one to look into. Another follow-up question on male-female classification. regarding the model and it being supervised machine learning, correct? Um,
Yeah.
it started off as you annotating the male plants first to train the model, or was it reverse where you annotated the female? Although it makes more sense maybe to do the males, but
Yeah. We did the males. So we actually did a lot of things in the early days where we even scraped hemp imagery from the internet and tried to train a model on the world of information about hemp. But in the end of the day, um, the male plants kind of stand out, and we could make a good AI system that just searches for the male plants. Um, and use like commercial data that you kind of have to have training data that matches what you're going to see in the commercial environment when your system's in production. And that's kind of a tough thing about machine learning enabled services in general, in agriculture and even in any industry. It's always about the data. A lot of times when the model's non-performative, your AI engineer is going to say, just more data, solve more data. And they're not wrong, but there's other topics too, which is like the data distribution has to match your how it's going to be used in the field. And that can be a moving target in agriculture because you have changing sizes of plants, changing morphologies. Like first it's vegetative, then it's flowering, and maybe there's other stages depending on other crops. Asparagus is a weird one. Um, there's a lot of cool stuff that makes AI harder when you're applying AI to agriculture. So there ends up being a huge amount of work and software tooling for things like managing data and managing models. And we've probably trained hundreds of AI models in the past 6 months. So the efficiency enabled by our backend is important. You know.
all right. Yeah, before we get into the last two questions, in the last 3 minutes here, thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. Please, please, please complete our post-webinar survey, which I've linked in the chat. And subscribe to our Cornell Hemp webpage, and you'll see a little stay in the loop widget there where you can get uh, subscribed, and then you'll get notifications on when the video for this recording and recordings to come are posted. Okay, we'll speed through these last two questions. Where do you see your service work for industrial hemp fiber? I know we talked about it a little bit more, but just forward thinking, if you have any ideas just from this chat thus
Protecting a crop from birds when and there's more that we have to learn from farmers about is it just at the seedling stage, or does hemp seed have another problem around harvest? um, but definitely when you can avert crop loss and you can get a return on investment for working with our services, that is the best tie-up. And then a little bit more on the measuring hemp side of things, if we're working with, say, university, or maybe it's extension research where university has helped cover the cost and we're still working with a commercial farmer, it would be really exciting, I believe, to compare varieties, to measure height, to measure this VARI map of plant stress as it relates to nitrogen deficiency or drought conditions. I think that it's exciting that some people are trying to do dryland hemp, and it's exciting that we're still figuring out which varieties are the best for America. And so, some kind of phenotyping, if you will, or commercial validation of new varieties, I think is a great thing to focus on when we're measuring fiber and seed hemp.
I think so too. That's been my PhD, right? Phenotyping and measuring hemp, hence this webinar. All right, and then our last question here to sign us off is regarding what about the detection of mold or mildew in flowering hemp, or have you even seen that also too in other crops?
Yeah, that's a good one. I've seen some kind of mold or I forget the right name for it, but it was caused by like a worm that's in the buds, and that becomes kind of like a vector of infection, and then it dries out and it looks like it was set on fire or something. So we've seen that in a number of fields, and that's relatively easy for us to make an AI that would map that. It's just that unfortunately, people want to be more preventative, and the map doesn't deliver that much value. When it comes to things like mold and mildew and botrytis, we've definitely gotten requests from farmers. We're definitely interested in it, and we have to learn more about if you had this map of where it is, how quickly do you need it? If we're only able to see the same thing as a human, like, is there really going to be a big value to you to be scouting continuously? And can we scout in a way that's cost efficient rather than looking at every single plant?
Yes. And then, okay, if you will entertain me, I know we're at the last minute here. We got one final question.
Yeah, happy
What do
to.
you think your accuracy is, or how well do you think Skysense can
Oh, that's a good
detect
one.
both male and female structures?
Well, I'd say that a lot of people who work with us for roving male plants, the ones that have never heard of us before, because nowadays we're getting a lot of customers from referrals, they're usually skeptical. They're like, I don't think this is going to work. And I say, okay, let's do one test. Have your labor crew rogue the field the way you always do. Use your best guys, use all of them. I don't care. We'll fly afterwards and find all the male plants left behind. And typically, if they found 60 plants, we find like 30 that they left behind, something like that. And it's really impressive wow factor because people always think, oh, the human is 100% accurate. They're doing their best and they use human eyes and they're pulling male plants. But the reality is, I think humans in CBD hemp are approximately 60 to 70% accurate. And I think that our drone system is probably 10 percentage points more accurate than humans.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing to hear. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Justin, for being with us here today. I'm sure we've had a lot of great takeaways. I know I've had and maybe, right, the avenue for Skysense is not necessarily growers at the moment with hemp. Maybe it's researchers. So uh let's see who's on the call. Let's see if anything plugs there.
All right.
Happy to have you and be well, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week, and a great weekend.
Nice to meet you all. Feel welcome to connect, email, LinkedIn, or website. Really pleasure to share with you our story.
All right. Bye bye, all. Till next time.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.